David is 67. He worked hard his entire life, bought a home in the suburbs in the late 80s, raised 2 kids, and by every visible measure looked like he had it completely figured out. For a long time, he did. Linda is 51. Solid career in finance, nice car, family vacation every summer. If you looked at her life from the outside, you would think she was doing exceptionally well. Then there's Chris, 37. Student loans paid off slowly, watched his friends buy houses he couldn't touch, spent his weekends at restaurants and weekend trips because honestly, what else was he saving for? And finally, Mia, 23. Side hustle, TikTok presence, already 4 months into her investment journey. The most financially aware person in her family's history by a wide margin. 4 people, 4 different decades, 4 completely different financial realities. Every single one of them fell into the exact same trap. Not a similar trap. Not a loosely related trap. The exact same trap, just wearing different clothes depending on the generation. And by the end of this video, you are going to recognize which version you are living right now, what the trap actually is. Before I name it, I want to be clear about something. This has nothing to do with being careless with money. Most people who fall into it are actually pretty thoughtful. They budget, they think before they spend. The trap is considerably sneakier than that. At some point in every generation's story, the world around them quietly defined what doing well was supposed to look like. A certain kind of home, a certain kind of lifestyle, a certain kind of experience. And without anyone sitting you down and explaining it, you absorb that definition. We all did. It seeped in through the people around you, the culture you grew up in, the things that got celebrated and admired. And when you could finally afford to live that version of doing well, you did. It felt like the natural next step. It felt like progress. This is not greed. This is not carelessness. You were following the unwritten rules your generation handed you. Rules nobody questioned because everyone around you was following them too. And here's the part that makes it genuinely hard to see from the inside. It never feels wrong. It feels responsible. It feels earned. So let's go through each generation and find the exact moment those rules showed up. Because once you see it in someone else's story, you will start to see it in your own. David, 67. The house was the whole plan. David grew up watching his parents rent their entire lives. In the post-war decades, owning a home was the ultimate signal that you had made it. Stability, status, the American dream with a driveway and a lawn. So when David landed his first solid job and the bank approved him for the largest mortgage he could qualify for, he took it. Of course he did. That was the move. That was what you did. And in the 1980s, it genuinely made sense. Property was appreciating. Homeownership was building real equity. David's house is worth roughly 4 times what he paid for it. On paper, David is wealthy. But here is where it gets complicated. David is 67, and nearly all of his net worth is sitting inside 4 walls he lives in. The pension he expected never materialized. His company restructured in the 90s. He has some savings, but not nearly enough to fund 25 years of retirement comfortably. And selling the house means leaving the neighborhood where he has spent the last 35 years of his life. The house was never the trap. The belief that the house was the entire plan. That was the trap. David spent decades maintaining the signal of wealth. The home, the renovations, the extensions, the garden. While quietly underfunding everything else, the arrival was real. The foundation underneath it had gaps nobody noticed until it was almost too late to close them. Linda, 51, the lifestyle that grew with every raise. Linda's trap was quieter, in some ways more insidious, because it never looked like one big mistake. It looked like 100 small, completely reasonable decisions. Her generation came of age during the rise of the dual-income household. They watched their parents and thought, we will do better, we will earn more, we will have more. And they did earn more. That part worked exactly as planned. But here is what happened along the way. Every time Linda got a raise, and she got several, her life expanded to match it. Promotion at 33, upgraded the car, hit 6 figures at 39, moved to a bigger house, kids in high school, added the overseas vacation. Each individual decision made complete sense. She could afford it. She had earned it. She was being rewarded for years of hard work. This is called lifestyle creep. And it is the quietest wealth killer in personal finance. The problem was never that Linda spent money. The problem was that her expenses grew at exactly the same rate as her income. So despite earning more than either of her parents ever did, her savings rate barely moved. The gap between what came in and what went out stayed almost identical, just at a higher number. At 51, Linda looks financially successful in many ways she is. She has equity, she has assets, but she is also less than a decade from retirement. And the math is considerably tighter than it should be for someone who has been earning well for 2 decades. The arrival signal for her generation was lifestyle. Nice things, nice experiences, a life that looked and felt like success. And she delivered that signal faithfully every single month on direct debit. Chris, 37, the experiences that replaced the assets. Before I talk about Chris, I want to say something clearly first. The system genuinely moved against his generation in ways that were not their fault. The 2008 financial crisis wiped out the early careers of an entire cohort of people at the exact moment they were supposed to be building their financial foundation. That is real. That matters. That cannot be glossed over. But here is the trap his generation walked into, and it makes complete sense given everything they had been through. When you cannot afford the things that used to signal arrival, a house, a pension, real equity, you start spending on what you can afford. And for his generation, that meant experiences, travel, restaurants, concerts, subscriptions, convenience, and the culture backed this completely. Spend on experiences, not things. You cannot take money to the grave. Live your life. Every lifestyle brand, every think piece, every Instagram caption told this generation that the experience-first approach was actually the enlightened way to handle money, that older generations had it backwards, that memories were the real wealth. Chris spent his late 20s and early 30s building a life full of genuinely beautiful memories, but at 37, he has very little invested, no property, and a low-grade anxiety about the future that he manages by planning the next trip. The trap was never spending on experiences. The trap was using experiences as a direct substitute for building assets, while an entire cultural movement told him that was actually wisdom. The arrival signal became the lived life, the full passport, the story worth telling, and it was marketed so effectively that many people in his generation did not notice it was still just a costume. A different one, but the same function. Mia, 23, the performance of wealth. Mia is the most interesting case of all, because her generation is the most financially literate generation in history. They grew up consuming finance content. They know what an index fund is at 19. They talk about compound interest the way previous generations talked about sports scores. You would think they had escaped the trap entirely. Not quite. Their version of the trap is the most visible one ever created, because it lives online. The arrival signal is not a house or a lifestyle, or a stamp-filled passport. It is an aesthetic. The apartment that photographs well, the tech setup, the brands that say I have taste and I have arrived, to an audience of thousands watching in real time. And here is the twist that makes this version genuinely cruel. Mia is simultaneously investing. She has a brokerage account. She puts money in every month. She is proud of it, and she should be. That is a real start. But she is also spending significantly more each month on things whose primary purpose is how they appear on camera. The trap for her generation is not ignorance. They know the vocabulary. The trap is performance. Using the right financial language to signal wealth rather than actually build it. Posting about index funds while the actual numbers stay small. Talking about financial freedom while the spending habits quietly contradict it. Mia is not in trouble. She is 23 and already ahead of where Chris was at 23. But the trap is set and waiting, wearing a ring light and a carefully curated background. The one thing everyone who escaped it did for people, 4 decades. One trap. Every generation has people who saw it clearly and stepped around it. And when you look at what they did differently, it is almost always the same thing. They separated the signal from the substance. They made a deliberate decision to look less wealthy than they actually were, so that their actual wealth could grow faster. They delayed the costume, the older car, the smaller house a little longer, the skipped upgrade, the trip they did not book, and they put the difference somewhere that compounded quietly in the background. It is not a complicated idea, but it runs completely against every social instinct human beings have, which is why even smart, financially aware people fall straight into it. Here is what escaping it looks like for each of them. David's version, keep the house, but fund retirement aggressively alongside it. Not all in on one asset. Linda's version, pick one lifestyle upgrade per raise, and bank the other half. Let income growth outpace lifestyle growth for once. Chris's version, one significant trip a year instead of 4. Take the difference and put it into an index fund automatically every month without thinking about it. Mia's version, and she has every advantage of time on her side, is to make the actual investing number the thing she talks about. To build the real wealth faster than she builds the appearance of it. The rule, if you want one assets first, lifestyle second, every time. Not forever, just until the assets are doing enough work that the lifestyle is genuinely funded by what you have already built, not by what you are currently earning and immediately spending. That is the move every generation that got it right eventually figured out. David, Linda, Chris, Mia, none of them are bad with money. None of them made obviously stupid decisions. They all did exactly what their generation told them arriving was supposed to look like, and they all prioritized looking arrived over actually being arrived. So, here's the question I want to leave you with, and I want you to actually sit with it rather than scroll past it. Which version of the trap are you in right now? Is it the home that holds almost all your net worth? The lifestyle that quietly expanded with every pay rise? The experiences that felt like living but slowly replaced building? The aesthetic that performs wealth without quite creating it? The first step out of any trap is being able to name it clearly, so name it. And then decide what you're going to do about it.